Bueno, muy buenos días.
Morning, everybody. We are starting the last day of this multidisciplinary seminar on Natural Fertility Awareness. And Laura Arranz from Dr. Forum has just told me that there are still new registrations arriving on this last day, and that we have 3,034 people registered. And yesterday in the afternoon, we had connected during Maricetta's presentation. There were 1,000 people connected. We had people here in the room, plus people connected online, plus the people that watched the streaming through Instagram. And we'll do exactly the same thing today with the key lectures. And, well, this first workshop that we're going to be holding this morning, we prepared it and we feel very happy about it. We found that it was difficult to give it a title, but you know that words actually try to give a meaning to what we want to do. And what they did was design a title, that is the speakers, after a discussion via WhatsApp, and what they say is sexuality without any limits and love without any limits. And this is all about how to communicate the beauty of human love, because one thing is seeing it, understanding it, and another thing is putting it across. So we have two speakers that I believe are exceptional, and they've had a connection between each other. One was the student and the other one was the teacher. And firstly, I would like to introduce the teacher, Micaela Menárguez, who's from the Royal Academy of Pharmacy. She's the director of the bioethics chair of Murcia, and she also teaches family planning at the Universidad San Pablo. And she's been working for many years in the field of research. She has a doctoral thesis on cervical secretion, and she's also written about love. Well, and some people don't want to call it sex, but she's just published a very interesting book. It's still, well, it's just out of the printing presses, as it were. And the book is entitled "I Only Want People to Love Me." And then there's there's a second line that says, "The Tricks of Sex and Love." And, well, she's going to explain all the things that she's studied. And then we have Rafael Lafuente. Rafael Lafuente has a degree in Hispanic literature. He studied at the Colegio Retamar. And he's one of those professors who attracts people, who's a driving force, who makes his students think, and he doesn't leave anybody indifferent. And he's the director of the Kinestad program. He's a director for natural methods, and he's also working at the Universidad of Murcia. He's the chairperson of the Institute of Family Studies in Ciudad Real. And in recent years, most of his professional life as a professor or as a teacher at a school, he's given lectures throughout the country on issues that have to do with effective and sexual training. Now I'm going to give them the floor. I think it's going to be a very interesting seminar or workshop. It's going to be recorded, of course, but we want this workshop to be something that will give rise to many other workshops, but also so that it can be viral in the future through the website of this conference that will be present in many parts of the world. Thank you very much, Luis, for that presentation, or that introduction, rather. Well, my name is Rafael Lafuente, and I'm very happy to be here today. And the first thing is that I would like to thank Laura, who's been calling me doctor all the time. Well, first of all, many thanks to her. And my second gratitude has to go to Luis Chiva, who's allowed me to be here today, which is a wonderful opportunity. And I'm not only here with you, but also with everybody else online. And the third thing is that he's also had dinner with me. Well, and in fact, well, you could leave whilst I speak, as you have nothing to learn whilst I speak. I've got his book, because I hadn't seen this what you can autograph it. So yes, my colleague can autograph the book, and that's it. And I won't have to speak. I'm a professor. I'm a teacher. I'm a professor of literature, and I'm a man. And even so, I know perfectly well when a woman ovulates. And I think I'm here today to describe, well, to deliver a non-pharmaceutical point of view, a non-gynecology point of view. But I know what the women's cycles are. Well, we've had 3 cesarean sections, so cycles are becoming very important in my family. And I had to make an effort to explain to myself and to explain to everybody else too things that have to do with sex without barriers and love without limits. So what I would like to try to do is explain to you what I explain to students or to young people or to whoever calls me. And I'm going to try to explain the difference between conjugal sex and non-conjugal sex or marital sex, and the difference between, well, with having sexual intercourse with or without contraceptives. And firstly, I would like to deal with the zoology issue, because I think that this will provide us with a framework for what I have to say in the next few minutes. This is fundamental. Well, listen to me carefully, please. There's a kind of crab that couples on the seaside. So what is this coupling all about? Well, it's a very interesting thing, and that is that the female crab stands very, very still and waits for the candidates to get closer, and she doesn't do anything. And then those candidates that are male crabs, well, they get bored and they leave, and then others come along. But in any case, she doesn't move an inch for a long time. For how long? Well, in fact, who is she going to select? Well, she selects the crab that stays there for 24 hours without moving an inch, that stands there in front of her. That is 24 hours without moving. And you women, you know, you do some very strange things. Well, being a man, well, you know, it's tough. But anyway, do you know why she does that? Because she knows a lot about biology, about her own biology. She knows how important it is for us, for girls, to know a lot about their bodies. Because this female crab that knows a lot about her body knows that her coupling lasts 24 hours. And if you do so for 24 hours on the seaside, what happens? I don't live on the beach. I'm from Ciudad, but I know what happens what happens if you're there for 24 hours? Well, you know that the tide ebbs and comes back again, which means that during most of that mating or that copulation, they're going to be below the level of the sea. And what about if the crab is a lousy crab? So if the crab is a lousy crab, what happens? If it's a very, very sort of soft guy, a weak guy, a weakling, and the crab would say, "Oh, I'm getting wet. Well, I'm not very keen about mating when I'm wet." What happens if the male crab climbs down? Well, if he does so when they are mating and if they're covered by the water, well, the female crab, for him to place himself on top of her, what she does is move her shell a bit, and if he climbs down, water gets in and she dies. So that's why she wants to know if the male crab is capable of standing there for 24 hours to see what the crab does when the tide comes in. But as she knows what's at stake, well, she then sets a test. But as she knows what's at stake, what she does is, well, design a specific test to make sure that everything goes well. Haven't women been more sexually responsible because of the different forms of oppression that they've had to put up with? Any woman in the world, any woman of the world, healthy woman, what does she discover when she's in a fertile age? Well, becoming a woman meant that every month she had bleeding, she had headaches and backaches or back pains, and changes, mood changes or mood swings, the possibility of becoming pregnant. So being a woman meant that there were a number of symptoms that mean that all women throughout history have been sexually responsible. And men, well, I enjoy being a man. I defend men quite a lot. Well, perhaps we men couldn't take this on board because when we grow up, the only thing that happens to us is that if we touch ourselves, we like that. We don't bleed and we don't have any pains, and nor do we become pregnant. And if we touch ourselves, we like that. Although, as this seems that it's not compatible with very responsible girls and men hardly responsible, do you remember how that can be made compatible? Well, in those courtships, when the girlfriend used to say no, 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 no. And what you have to do is analyze that testosterone by doing good deeds. And I don't know, you could do something about your testosterone by discovering America or by becoming a firefighter or whatever. So you have to encourage your sons to do things so that they can do something about that impetus. As I don't do any sport, I have to do the ironing at home. But you have to do something because men are capable of doing the very best and the very worst. You know that we are overrepresented in the Gauss bell. We are capable of doing the very best and the worst. And this depends on our motivation, of course. So we have to set very high goals for boys because they are capable of doing many things as long as they are sufficiently motivated. Well, okay, now that I've defended men, and if you're not a very reliable guy, you're going to climb down from the crab. So having said that, the next thing is sex. Well, a Martian would agree with me if a Martian were to land on planet Earth, because he takes a look at a sexual relationship with, I don't know, with myself and my wife, skin against skin with penetration and ejaculation inside the vagina. So the Martian, perhaps he feels somewhat shy, and he'd probably say, "Oh, this is the most intimate thing you do on planet Earth, isn't it?" So, well, this is the most intimate thing, and I'd say, "Oh, yes, this is the most private thing we do," and sex is the most intimate thing we have. It's the most intimate thing that a human being can do. So, why not do it with lots of people? So if it's the most intimate thing, can you do that with lots of people? I don't want to be rude, but when I say that it's the most intimate thing, once upon a time a student asked me that once semen enters into the woman's vagina, well, obviously it was a question of a virgin. He said, okay, well, supposing that one sperm reaches the egg, what happens with the rest of it? Well, for the rest of the sperm cells, well, your parents have a bathroom in their bedroom, okay? And when somebody has sexual intercourse with their wife, perhaps the woman the following day, who is going to discharge the semen, is going to put on salva slip, which is what they call it here, but in any case, she's going to lose semen. What happens when you sleep with somebody unknown? Well, exactly the same thing. So it's absolutely useless. So apart from being many intimate, the Martian would also say, okay, well, 9 months later a baby could appear, and let's look where it comes out from. And this is the most powerful thing, I think, that we have on planet Earth. That is, the sexual act, apart from the most intimate thing we can do, is also the most powerful thing we can do. Because, as far as we know, all of us that are here today, it allows you to create babies. You can create a baby by having sexual intercourse. So this is the same thing as I said before. Well, you wouldn't really want to do it with too many people. So this is the most intimate act on planet Earth and the most powerful act on planet Earth. Does it make any sense doing it if you don't do it properly? Does it make any sense doing it? I mean, you need to do it properly, otherwise it wouldn't make any sense. I'm not going to use the term sin in my presentation because this was a technical term that somebody gave to something that doesn't go all the way. But let's talk about 100% sexual in 2 dimensions. So doing it 100% means that you're doing that as you go. In other words, without any contraceptives. And of course, why do I have sexual intercourse without using contraceptives? Well, I need to do it in the true fashion, because have you ever stopped to think about who has sexual intercourse with contraceptives? And my apologies for the comparison, because I know that here we have different levels to address. But in the case of pornography, can you imagine pornography without contraception? So what has allowed women, these crabs that knew what was going on, what has allowed those female crabs to behave in a responsible manner? Because, well, what has changed with the sexual revolution is not the way in which men address sexuality, but rather women. And this has changed because of contraception. And, well, let's be honest, what is the use of contraceptives? What are they supposed to be useful for? What can they be used for? The truth. Well, they allow you to sleep with people that if you were to have to do that without any kind of contraception, you wouldn't do it. So contraception has allowed people, let's say, approach things differently, and it has allowed people to sleep with people that they wouldn't sleep if the act were truly intimate. So this, let's say, has worsened the sexual encounter. So would pornography be possible without contraception? How much would you have to pay an actress if there were a possibility of becoming pregnant?
O sea, el que se va de prostitutas.
Prostitution. What about prostitution? Is there possibility of these people not using a contraceptive where you know that the man wants to be loved? Let's assume that it's 5% of love. And with that level of surrender, you need to have contraception because you cannot accept the intimacy of the act, and of course you cannot accept the potential it offers. But what happens when the father of, a student of mine, when he has an affair? Or perhaps it's a workmate and he likes her a lot. He's dated her quite a lot too, or quite frequently. And Luis Chiva says, well, be careful when you accompany somebody after work because it's raining and you have very good manners and you drive her home, and the second day there's only a slight drizzle, but as you are a nice guy, the conversation of the day before was nice, and the third day, well, you sleep with her, or the third month. But, well, to fall in love with somebody, you only need time.
Ya está enganchado a un 50% que la...
This, he would do things for her because he's really sort of hooked up. But I bet he wouldn't sleep with her without using contraceptives, because if for instance, the ghost of future Christmas would show up, and I don't know, I could use a name from Pamplona, a typical name. I don't know. Well, Paco, for instance. Paco, tonight she's going to become pregnant. Well, one of these two women is going to become pregnant. It could be your wife or it could be your mistress. So choose. And what I think is that Paco, with loads of common sense, would draw the following conclusion. Look, I'm in love with my workmate, and I have 3 kids with my wife, and I have a family track record, if you want, a family history, and I think that it would be much better for my wife to become pregnant. But Paco cannot have sexual intercourse without contraception with his mistress. But one of my students that is in second year, for instance, and who loves his girlfriend, I never judge my students, of course, because I know that they love their girlfriends. But look, I'd say, look, between your sex and my sex with Dinah, there's an essential difference. And as you don't love her like I love Diana, you cannot sleep with her like I sleep with Diana. So you either have to do it or mutual masturbation or petting, a bit of friction or whatever. You don't go all the way, so you have to do it either by not going all the way or by using contraceptives, which is like not going all the way, because it's like putting up a physical barrier or by putting the women's body on standby. So let's assume that you love your girlfriend at 75% or 80%, for instance. But having a baby when you're at university is not good for you. Well, as you love your girlfriend, but you don't love her like I love Diana, you say that you want to finish your career. You're speaking in the singular. So you want to do a couple of masters too, and possibly one of them in New York. So leaving everything just because of her, no, I think it's not the right time for that. And proof of the fact can be seen is that you never have complete sexual intercourse with her. It's beautiful. And as there's not a complete surrender, they never have sex 100%. And I feel superior to them, and I say, well, poor fellas. So what you have, I'm not going to judge what you have or what you do. Yes, I don't like it compared to what I've got, because I don't have to hide away. I can have complete sexual intercourse with my wife, and I don't have to hide it from anybody. But what you're doing, well, it's nice, but it's, But if you think about it, although you say that you love her a lot, that has not really become materialized. So sex at 100% can only happen in a context in which you surrender 100%. Why? This is also mentioned by Luis Chiba, and he's very funny. So what is the worst thing that could happen to me if I sleep with my wife? What is the worst thing that can happen to us married guys? Well, the worst thing that could happen to married people, well, she becomes pregnant, and the worst thing that can happen to you if you sleep with your wife is that you have a baby. But that cannot be said by a prostitute or by somebody that's unfaithful to his wife or my student in second year. So sex is necessarily different, and it's obviously worse than my sexual intercourse. It's not 100% sex, and contraceptives are, let's say, an example or an exercise of sincerity. Well, look, what I have to do is I have to protect myself against you, because if you become pregnant in second term, I'll end up without a master's course in New York. And if, for instance, there's a foundation that says, look, could I go to Madrid? Well, they've told me that I have to go to Madrid. And at that point in time, well, I start packing my bags. But okay, but are you going to dump your professional life for Diana? Well, it's very tough. So of the 4 billion women in the world, I'm only willing to drop my professional career for one. But anyway, and here comes the second dimension of 100% sex. I said for this to be 100%, you have to go all the way. And there are not that many people that go all the way, or that do it 100%. I'm not sure if I've ever told you that the real reason due to which I don't use contraceptives, and that is contraceptives for men, I don't use condoms because I can imagine the most intimate act that exists with my wife, and the most powerful act, having sexual intercourse with my wife. So it's just me with her, and with a supermarket bag between both of us. And I think that is terrible. That's very gross. I don't do that. And then we have, it could be any supermarket. I mentioned Mercadona. It could be anything you have in the United States. Anyway, I received a call from a former student of mine. And you know that if you open up a broad communication channel, the other party can use that channel to speak to you. Well, former student called me up. who said that, well, the previous evening he'd done I don't know what with a girl. Well, things that you could do sexually. It was a level -42, something absolutely gross, terrible. He wanted to do things properly, but he asked me for a motivation. He said, look, I know what's okay, but how can I do that? So first I started off with a motivation. I said, well, look, just imagine, for instance, that your future wife is there somewhere and that you still haven't met her, but you would like your future wife to be doing, would you like her to be doing these horrible or gross things with others? I said, no. And then I said, well, look, I became more mystical, and I said, look, well, you have faith. Pray. And I said, well, that has never worked for me. So I gave him a third option, and I said, look, mate, in view of so much fake sex and so much rubbish and so much pornography, infidelities and prostitution and halfway sex, there's somebody that has to lead in this battle. And he said, I'll buy that, I'll buy that. And the guy, well, he's very active, a very tense sort of person, hyperactive. And he said, yeah, that's it, I've got it. So we have to compensate all of these evil things. So whenever I don't end up having sexual intercourse with somebody, I'm preventing a divorce, I'm preventing prostitution, and perhaps, well, I don't know, I'm even resuscitating a kitten that is about to die. So every time I treat a girl well, as I'm supposed to treat her, and I wait to have the real thing or to do the real thing, I'm helping overcome, I'm defeating all that junk sex that people have. So sex 100% focused on the intercourse, and I do it without any kind of protection because I can't imagine a barrier between her and me. She doesn't use hormonal contraceptives, although both of us are philologists. We know how wonderful the ovarian cycle is, and we believe that it's tremendous to have to put the body of a young woman on standby to be always sexually available, because it's not necessary. We love each other when we can do it, and we love each other on those days when we can't do it. And the other issue is, let's say that it's gross. Well, it's sexual intercourse is gross if there's no need to do it. But isn't it also gross to see that there are sexual relations if this doesn't really involve the fact of surrendering? Because apart from sleeping with Diana, I do a couple of very curious things with her. And at home I do the ironing, and this is true, and those of you that know me know this is so. And I do the ironing. I usually say I iron for Diana. Well, first, so that the feminists get mad and said, how come that you do the ironing? Or how come that you do the ironing for her? No, I have only one reason to do the ironing. I hate ironing, but I'd never ironed at my brother's homes. But in any case, I think it's a torture, and I don't like it. But I iron for her because the only reason I do so is that she doesn't iron. So at home, it's either she irons or I irons, and we have very young kids, and they're too short. But when they reach the height of the ironing board, they got to do the ironing, and I have to prove to my wife that I am infinitely in love with her. So when they reach the height of the ironing board, they will iron their clothes and I will iron Diana's clothes. It's as if I were the chairperson of an international bank, and if I were doing things away from home that are incredible, even if I were a firefighter, saving people's lives or earning lots of money or creating jobs or whatever, but I have to do something within in the house, because the domestic chores are very curious, because they are very tiny, they're very humble, and because they are done for the most important people in your life. So whatever a bank manager does, or what the CEO of some company does, or what a surgeon does, they do it for unknown people. Who are very good people. They have their souls, but they are completely unknown. And when you cook or iron or you tidy the house up, you do it for the most important people in your lives. So this is why I think that even those that have a maid, they have to, well, do something so that the husband can do it from the wife and vice versa, because that is you have to prove to that person that who you really love is her. And I'm saying the woman to the husband, because you have to be aware of these new theories. Because if a woman is breastfeeding upon demand, or I think that if a child, if a teenager asks for a brownie at 4 o'clock, the mother gets up and makes the brownie. And the mother could get up 3 times every night and breastfeed. I do anything for my daughter. But women think that if they are doing something for the husband, it means that they are submitting to him. And well, it doesn't matter if you do that for your husband, because he does everything for you. So I'm dying for Diana. And all of my money, well, she can take all my money away too. So I got married in a specific tax regime, and as I don't gamble online, I have to invest my money. Well, you know that we guys are gamblers, and as I don't gamble online, I'm going to. Well, it means that my wife can take away all my money, and those are the situations in which I say that means that my money can only be taken away from by Diana. I only sleep with Diana too. And what we have is a community of property. So that's how we avoid schizophrenia. And those misinterpretations of, look, I love your body. You can explain this to a boyfriend. They want to sleep together, but I know that the boyfriend in second term, he doesn't iron at his in-laws' place, nor. So your father gives you 50 euros and you give them automatically to your girlfriend. No, that doesn't happen. And in fact, it's. Well, just imagine, but the boyfriend says, look, why don't we marry? Because you love me. And the answer is, so I have to give you sex to prove that I love you. Well, look, let's do it the other way around. Prove that you love me and I'll give you sex. And here I'm including ironing and money, because if not, it's not about loving. But just imagine that she says, look, I love doing sport. For instance, I'm going to ride a mountain bike, and people buy these very big and very flashy, very expensive bicycles. And the girl says, look, I think we could buy the bicycle together, just in case you would like to use it one of these days. And, well, it's going to cost me 3,000 bucks. And I thought, well, you could give me 1,500 bucks. And then we're talking about the second-term pupil. And so the guy, as he sees that he's got his testicular barrier at the height of the throat, basically, he becomes mature. In other words, that is the capacity of projection towards the future and foreseeing the consequences of our decisions and then deciding in freedom. So the guy that projects himself toward the future and sees what could happen with his 1,500 bucks becomes mature and tells the girlfriend, oh, look, what about if we don't go ahead with that? Or what about if we just, split? Well, because he's afraid of losing the money. And, well, are you going to give me the 1,500 euros if we split? Or are we going to have a shared custody of the bike? So, in other words, the guy has matured, because as 1,500 bucks are a lot of money, he wants to be completely sure about who he's going to give that money to. Okay, and you can surrender your body to anybody. Okay? And this is where the wounds come along, and the schizophrenia too, of people that are giving it all with their body, and this is explained perfectly well by Micaela, in other words, the body language. And what about if I sleep with you? I'm telling you that I want you forever, that I love you forever. So I can't sleep with you and not do anything more for you. So what I can't do is sleep with you and not do anything more for you, because that's when schizophrenia comes along, and that's when these complicated situations come along too. Can you hear me? Well, the bicycle and the crab can give us all of the key elements, because this is what it's all about. So you have to give me everything. And when you give me everything, I'll give you everything. So what difference is there between doing it the day before the wedding and the day after the wedding? Well, the day before the wedding, you didn't do the ironing, nor did you give her all your money. Don't call it a wedding. So sleep with her when you go to the bank and when you sign on the papers to get a joint checking account. And that's when I will trust you, because it means that you're looking towards the future with her, and she feels that you're not going to drop her. Well, we have stories of female crabs. For instance, they called it the tobacco story. Somebody very close to my family, and the guy went to work, and he sent a WhatsApp to his wife from work and said, well, they had a 3-year-old child, 3-year-old girl. That wasn't what he expected, really, and that he wasn't going to go back home. Yeah, but what sort of courtship had they had? How could he prove that he was a solid crab? He hadn't demonstrated that. How can you prove that? Which is the only proof you can deliver to see if the crab is going to withstand that? Which is the only proof that we've had over the centuries to guarantee that you're going to have a successful marriage? Well, it's 100% abstinence before you get married. There's no other option. And in fact, I think that we should give an opportunity to the classics, and I mean the 10 commandments. So of the 10, 2 are sexual. But just imagine that they were not drawn up by God. Well, the Jews that were no fools, of course, said, okay, well, let's reason about this. How can we live properly in society or live well? But it so happens that what you do is you steal in Levi's shop, and as Levi's upset, he beats you up. He beats up Samuel, and Samuel, who's a shady guy, calls 5 friends, and all the tribe goes to kill Levi. And he said, well, look, no, you must not steal, because then things get totally out of hand. So when they said you will not commit adultery, they saw that it was the same thing. You sleep with Levi's wife, Levi beats you up, and then you come along with your cousins, and that just doesn't work properly. So you will not commit adultery, or you will not be adulterous. Look, Sarah, I love you a lot. So sleep with me. So he sleeps with Sarah, and Sarah develops a big tummy. And as he's a lousy guy, he's a crappy guy, he leaves. He goes to another tribe and leaves Sarah there on her own with a baby. You will not commit impure acts. So let's give an opportunity to the classics. So what we have to do is explain things, because, well, since it's 3,200 years explaining things incorrectly. It's been 3,200 years during which we've explained things wrongly, incorrectly. And this, but we have to believe in this first. We have to tell people about it. And well, yesterday, Mario Iceta said that we had made the mistake of not talking about this, because there are things that do have a big influence, and it's not only about sex. What do you mean? What do you mean that it's only sex? Well, for instance, for those of you that are not big fans of this saga, this is from Harry Potter. Do you remember Voldemort? Well, through a powerful intervention, he could kill. What he did was take away part of that person's soul and put it in an object. We said that sex is a powerful act. And when there's a sexual intercourse or sexual relationship, as if you would grab a portion of your soul and you put it into that person. There are lots of Horcruxes, as they're called, or golden crosses, and there are people that wear fragments of the souls of other people, because sex cannot be non-intimate, and sex is a powerful act that enters into the person. And what is the difference between premarital or extramarital sex and marital sex itself? Well, that when you have sexual intercourse with somebody who you've not surrendered to, truly, you are putting your soul into the wrong person. And when that couple splits up, that's when the wound comes along. Because normally it's the girl that is more affected, because it's not the same thing as accepting or being penetrated than penetrating somebody else. So when the girl then thinks, well, this guy's taking away a chunk of my soul with him. And in what happens in marital sex? Well, exactly the same thing. The only thing is that what you are doing is you're putting your soul where you promised that you would put your entire soul. And it's the same thing, and it's completely different at the same time. What about the risks? Well, this is something that was confirmed by a former pupil of mine who came to see me a few weeks ago, that when there's physical contact involved in courtship, it means that friendship stops and the nuclear issue becomes the when and where are we going to do it. And there are no two ways about it. These are couples that find it much more difficult in getting to know each other and in creating a friendship. Everybody thinks that everything is absolutely simple and easy. They know nothing about marital life. Poor little things. And, well, there are many occasions for abstinence, of course. Well, you see that, well, with this lie of contraception, the boyfriend and girlfriend have no occasion to observe abstinence. So, well, there are occasions when you're married. The other day, I was on the train from Ciudad Real to Madrid with a soldier who was going to go to Iraq for 9 months. I suppose that, well, he's going to remember his wife for 9 months. But a teenager thinks about that and, well, has a panic attack. So you don't do this sometimes in your married life because they think that it's like having, well, sex at all times. And, well, this conversation on porn could be beautiful. In other words, the father says to his son, look, I don't watch porn because I'm also faithful to your mother in my brain. Well, it's just like Diana's postpartums and the risk pregnancies of a friend of mine, or being tied. That is a contraceptive approach. And on Friday night you fall asleep, and then Saturday you invite cousins to come along for dinner. They leave at 2 o'clock in the morning. And if you are a terrible fool, on Sundays you watch your favorite program that finish at 1:30 in the morning, and we do nothing over the weekend with your wife. Or there's another very good contraceptive method, and that is that you become very lovable, and in the middle of, you know, what's happening, you have a baby, I have a baby in the room, and you as a man want to carry on because, well, there's nothing wrong with you. But she's a woman who says, oh, hold it, hold it, hold it. And or any argument as from 6:30 in the evening, and that is a wonderful contraceptive, because any argument with your wife as from that time is fatal. So then you have courtship that only has sex and excursions or outings. They don't learn that. It's the crab that doesn't know how to stand still. Or losing your freedom. Well, you see, it just hooks you on. And this is the testimonial issue here. When you have sexual intercourse, well, complete or not, no, they're never complete. But it's so intimate that it really, really hooks you up. And it's very difficult to leave somebody with whom you're sleeping. It's very tough because you establish a link. And when you explain this with the covalent links, I just go crazy. But yes, it is addictive, if you want. And I went out with a girl before I met Diana for quite a long time, and I just couldn't leave her. We used to argue on a daily basis, and we used to shout at each other, and my friends just couldn't believe what was going on. They couldn't understand that I was dating that girl, and also seeing how we behaved, because we had these massive arguments in public. They were terrible arguments. And then when everybody was, when we hugged each other, that was absolutely perfect. It was lovely. So when you're in bed, you cannot take a decision of who you are going to marry, because when in bed, everybody is absolutely perfect and great. They're great guys. But to leave this girl, I had to go to Germany. I had to go to Cologne in 2005. And as she didn't like that sort of club where I went to, then it was perfect for me, because I was 1,000 kilometers away from her. In those 2 weeks, I got some oxygen into my brain, and I could then decide freely that I was going to leave her. So sex is addictive. What about marital sex? Yes, the same thing applies. So what is the difference? Well, it's the same thing that I said before. It's beautiful. That in marital sex, you can perhaps become addicted to the wrong person. And in marital sex, you are becoming addicted to the person that you'd promised that you'd be addicted to. So in other words, it would be ridiculous not to have sexual intercourse when you are not married, because in marital sex, anybody knows that. And if you're sleeping with your wife and you can hear the echo, of somebody saying, look, I love you, Dinah, and I surrender myself to you. And every time a couple sleeps together, they are stamping the passport that is conducive to eternal life. And this is so many light years away from that other couple with their coitus interruptus and their condom. Don't call it a sin. Just say that it's very sleazy, and they'll understand, or that it's very shabby. And then, well, I'm going to let you speak now, Micaela, but there was this driver of the bus that takes me to school, and how his daughter, aged 36, had come back home again after 15 years of courtship, from 21 to 36 years of age. And of those 15 years, well, the last years they'd actually lived together, 3 years living together, and the previous they were just courting. And after all of that time, the daughter came back home again, and she was still deeply in love with the guy. But she had left this guy. So the potential father said, well, why? But because my daughter is in love with this guy. Well, but she had been telling the guy that she'd wanted to marry and have children, and he was a very nice guy. He was a very nice guy, said the potential father-in-law. But we're very happy like we are. We're very comfortable like this. So having sex and traveling around. So whatever you do, it's always for the worse. So these girls that don't know how to choose properly because they don't know how to subject their crabs to the right test. If you give your crab trips and sex, how can you ask them to become the father of a baby? So we'll have to ask for 100% of what can be given, because if your wife can give up to 7%, okay, and if she can go up to 11%, well, that will also be 100%. 11 or 7% does make a difference, because each one, the woman has to set the limit as to where she feels comfortable. But if you ask her to deliver more than she can give, she can feel raped by her own husband. If she gives you less than what she can give you, she's tricking you. We don't accept 6.75 over 7 if you don't accept 7.25 over 7. So there has to be closeness, there has to be communication. And abstinence is also 100%. I'm deeply in love with my wife in these postpartums with a cesarean section, and abstinence is absolute proof, because you could sleep with anybody, and waiting, you'd only wait for your own wife. But you could sleep with anybody, and you'd only wait for your wife. And that man has to surrender as a man, and women the same thing. A friend of mine said that what husband wanted to do is just to let off pressure, and I think that it's like Saint Joseph. Honestly, he's a very patient guy. And she told us that, well, she surrenders more because as she does it, and she's not really too keen about the idea, she surrenders more. He said, look, you're surrendering yourself as a woman in regard to specific things, but you do it with your husband where you don't like it at the beginning, then you sort of get used to it. And then he's surrendering as a man. How does he do so? I was there at the wedding, and you say that he does that to take off pressure. And I heard him say there were, of the 4 billion women in the world, only want to let off pressure with you, only have eyes for you. And you are the only person that I'm concerned about. But we are going to do it, aren't we, one of these days, I suppose. So this, I think I'm not going to talk to you about this because, well, okay. Well, look, you see, waiting, it's curious, because waiting is not only about waiting before you get married, but the thing is that, I don't know, well, God Almighty or Darwin or Chaos or whoever made the body said that although men and women have the 4 stages of sexual response, arousal, plateau, orgasm, and resolution, although these are 4 identical stages, time-wise they're very different. And there are people that feel very unhappy about this, and there are women that have never or hardly ever reached orgasm. Well, this is a problem, because the man becomes excited like this, very quickly. from 1 to 3 minutes, say the experts, and some experts say from 1 to 3 seconds. So we become aroused through our eyesight. And then there's a plateau. A plateau, and don't believe that it's very long and it's not very tall either. And this is the amount of time that one maintains that arousal. And then there's orgasm with only one. And then after that comes a resolution. And I'm breaking the chalk because it had to be called the absolute refractory period. And that means that a recently ejaculated guy, just imagine that a thief climbs into the house and the man, still in bed, says to the thief, please, I cannot defend my family right now, so don't hurt us, right? Because that's what things are like. But the woman, let's see how many times I break the chalk now. And this is in pink, right? She has a very low arousal, very low, very long arousal, and higher plateau and a longer plateau compared to the man. And she has one or several orgasms and a resolution. Well, what they want to do is, I don't know, have a chat after they finish. And this is, well, what the woman does. And this, I think, well, is very disappointing for the students when I tell them. So that means that they're always going to be unsatisfied, because this is not a very good chart, because it's very generous with men. But we're going to leave them sort of unhappy or unsatisfied, because, well, whoever has waited a lot during their courtship will be capable of waiting for the orgasm of his wife. Well, how? Well, you have to be very artistic about it, because it seems that these are completely incompatible things, but they're not, because we men know that that the woman can be aroused through different senses, and she's erogenous throughout her entire body. So what do we men do? We can go to a workshop, or we can learn to do the following. Because women, what a woman has to do is open up her mind, her brain. So as man knows that, he said, okay, look, what I have to do is set into motion my woman's clock from the very first thing in the morning. So he goes to work, and every half hour sends to his wife one of these emojis, you know what they're like, and well, every half an hour, boom, sends one of these pictures. And the wife feels loved since the first thing in the morning. She thinks, oh, he remembers me. Well, please, this is for you, ladies. If you have it clear in your mind that it's going to be no, if you are very clear that it's going to be no from the very first thing in the morning, the first picture you receive, send back the one giving the finger, okay? The other emoji with a finger. Because, no, and I'm now going to get serious again. No, because you know that when you are rejected in your own bed, that's very painful, and this produces lots of arguments. And if you have it very clear in your mind from the very first thing in the morning, say no to your husband. But, well, perhaps, I don't know, well, perhaps you wink your eye or whatever, you send back that picture. But at 12 o'clock, I don't know, there are people that remember their mother. And you call her at 12 o'clock, and your wife thinks, oh, he remembers me. So you get back home, and you're absolutely exhausted. You don't even take off your coat, and practically with your briefcase, the kids come along, running down the corridor, and you do this. You sort of stand, well, you stand aside. You are like a bullfighter, and you've been told by Dr. Jiva that the first kiss is always for mummy. And mummy says, oh, this guy really loves me. But as it so happens that mummies, well, you see that you women love your children, right? I don't know. So men have learned that. So what I do is as if I'm playing with my kids, as long as my wife is there to witness it. So if my wife is looking at me and she's saying, oh, what a nice guy, but if she turns away, I stop playing. And then you say, okay, do you want me to bath them, or do you want me to cook dinner? So you sit down to dinner, and you'd left the TV on to do the following. You leave the TV on, right, because there's a Champions League on the telly. There's a Bayern Munich or Juventus. And she said, oh, this guy's going to watch the football match. And there are many men who watch the Champions League football with their feet up on the coffee table, drinking a beer. And when they finish the match, when the match finishes, let's go and do it. And the wife says, let's go do what? But the husband knows, well, allows the match to start. And then, well, tries to look like a fool, grabs the remote control, and switches off the TV set and says to his wife, oh, God, I was really looking forward to sitting down with you. Tell me what your day has been like. Up you go, like a rocket. And she says, oh, you are a very crafty guy. So the wife knows, my wife knows what's going on here. So don't get nervous, Micaela. And so he said, oh, well, she probably thinks, oh, but he's a nice guy, though. Although, well, tonight you're going to have a reward. So you go up to the bedroom, and you're still waiting because you, as a man, porn has taught you to ask things for yourselves. You get aroused very quickly. You don't need anything for you. You have to ask what she needs for herself. And possibly she will know what you believe she needs. So please tell us husbands what you want. We are not soothsayers. I'd like you to caress my back, for instance. Yes, it's surprising, isn't it? But I'd like you to caress me on the back, whatever. And then you are caressing your wife's back, and you think, well, this is no good to me. But anyway, she loves it. And I told you about the echo. You can hear that later. But before that echo, you can hear a sort of click. Right. Here we go. And then, well, this is like when you're at home. Because what you have done, you have allowed her. You've started off here on the chart. Okay, down here. So there you are. Bingo. And that's what we have there. So if we wait for her, we arrive together. But the man has to wait, because if not, there's no way. Jose, the last idea. And now I am going to give the floor to Micaela on safe sex. So we have to counteract these messages. Well, it's a little bit like what people do in judo. They have to try to knock down their opponent. Don't they talk to us about safe sex? Let's talk about, let's use their same images. With the car, nobody lies to us in the case of cars, because cars are very powerful weapons, like sex is too. Nobody says, look, why don't you drive as fast as you want, but use 2 safety belts? No, politicians wouldn't dare say that. What they ask us is to be responsible. As a car is a very powerful instrument, you're not going to drive very fast. And if you drive very fast, I'm going to give you a ticket. Fine. And the same thing happens with smoking, because they don't say, look, smoke as much as you want. No, but with a double filter. No, they don't say that. They never say that. They say smoking can kill you. So why these campaigns? Well, some of them, well, and for instance, you have one here down below, which is like a blasphemy. Well, it's not true. There's no such thing as a safe sex. Since contraceptives were accepted, this is the end result with governance of all political trends. There are more and more abortions every year. And if there are no more abortions, is that there are so few fertile women in Spain, it's because they could not have more abortions. Was this safe sex? No, this was a trap. Safe sex, this was a ridiculous advertisement from the ministry. It's not about using a condom as if were a cape. No, to protect yourself against your wife, you have to protect yourself against all the others. So safe sex is not about that. This chart is of when we did things by hand, and I'm not sure if yesterday the pharmacists made you feel afraid, or the nurses, but natural methods can teach us men, even though I'm a philologist. All you need is the suitable motivation, but one does learn, and one becomes used to doing it this way. And my wife, at the beginning, we did this with much more delicacy. Well, that is my biro. I used to write things down because all of the symptoms are of the women, so I did the penciling in. Now we use mobile apps and things like that, and that is marvelous, because that has saved us to a very large extent, because my wife had a first cesarean section, and then a second cesarean section because of a detachment of placenta. My wife entered the operating theatre crying because she knew it was going to be the second cesarean section. We were in Ciudad Real, and it was a completely different story compared to Murcia. And the baby had to be in the incubator for a month. That happened to the first 2 babies. And she was in a very poor condition, and she did not want to become pregnant again. She was afraid of becoming pregnant, absolutely terrified of becoming pregnant. But as God is so good, and as God allowed us philologists to learn the natural methods, thanks to our knowledge of her body, she, who was very afraid of becoming pregnant, never was afraid of me. She was never afraid of me in our conjugal life. Our marital life was very good, with continence when it had to be observed, but as we also loved each other 100% when incontinence, that was great. It's wonderful to be accompanied or to be supported. It was great when her third pregnancy came along. And I would just like to thank Regina and Luis because, and I have to cry because the support we received was totally different. My wife had never went to the gynecologist with the first pregnancy. And the first consultation she went to, she heard the word abortion in the first consultation by week 12. And what Regina told us is, do you know that we usually run a test to see if there are any flaws or any defects in the baby? Well, that's not very nice. And I said, we're not going to do that, are we? Or when in the middle of the cesarean section, when Luis was operating, he only said 3 things. I was there. I know that I was bothering them, but they allowed me to be there. He worked so silently that we didn't hear anything of what happened during the cesarean section because, well, you know, the women say that, well, they mention what the doctors talk about, but I heard nothing because you were working together with Laura, wasn't it? Well, you were working in silence, but he spoke 3 times. And the first time he said, look, Diana, I'd not done the 2 previous cesarean sections, but this is much better than what I thought, and carried on working. And some minutes later, he spoke again, and he said, Diana, I want you to know that this is going to be spectacular when I finish with it, and he carried on working. And the 3rd time, I think that you skipped all the protocols because you were closing that 3rd cesarean section, and he said, Diana, I don't want to pressure you, but you can have another baby whenever you feel like it. And I'm telling you this because I'm very grateful. Safe sex is not that. Safe sex is sleeping with who's not going to walk out on you. Safe sex is knowing who you have in your bed with you. That is safe. And this is the wedding picture. Well, from the wedding picture to the first ecography, because safe sex is about sleeping with somebody that is not going to walk out on you. And we're going to put on this video and we'll finish. So please go ahead with the video.
There's a light, a certain kind of light that never shone on me. I want my life to be what God does it to find God. Ain't God. Hey, you don't know.
Esta es la peor.
What it's like.
Esa es terrible.
Baby, you don't know what it's like to love somebody,
Ay, ay.
to love somebody
Ay, ay.
the way I love you.
Ay, ay.
Oh, what it's like. Baby, you don't know what it's like.
Porque lo peor que puede pasar.
Because the worst thing that can happen is that a baby comes along. Well, anyway, well, thank you all very much, and I'll leave you these references just in case you want to watch some of our videos, the videos I use to explain things to young people or parents, my contact should you require it. And I'm sorry for having spoken for so long, but I'll leave you now with Micaela, because I'm sure that she will now point out some important things in relation to what I mentioned, and I feel like a student once again, and I'm going to take notes to learn. Thank you.
Yes, now we can. I confirm that you are the best student I've ever had, and I'm very proud of you. Let's talk. He has been speaking about sex without barriers, and now we are going to take up a few of those things, and we are going to talk about love without limits. I'm going to remind, we are going to go to the basis. What is sexuality? That's the big question that we are asking ourselves this morning. And also, where is it in the genitalia? Is it in the brain? Is it in the body? As a definition, we have always said that human sexuality is the set of biological features, psychological, intellectual features that make that human being manifest as a man or a woman. And the body has a language. This is what we were talking about before. It's not the same thing to kiss the lips than the mouth, greeting with your hand than embracing. And then another question that I'm asking my students always is, what's the difference between human sexuality and animal sexuality? It's not an easy question to answer. They have to think a bit in order to answer. And at the end, after, well, I'm asking the questions, it takes them a few days in thinking about them and answering. And at the end, the great response is, I decide, as Rafael said, if I have sexual relations or not, and when, with whom, where, and how often. Because I'm choosing, because I am free. If I weren't free, I couldn't wait as the crab. I would have to, it would be my instinct that is linked to specific periods in life and not necessarily to reproduction. I'm choosing if I have sexual relations or not. That's why natural methods are possible. That's why sexual abstinence under the courtship is possible, because I make decisions and I can choose. And another of the ideas is the sexuality. How many aspects does it have? I always think about a table with 4 legs, because those 4 legs, what are they? It's an affective part, the part of the affection. I write messages, I'm tender. The woman has to be tender as well. And a part that has to do with the conversation, with the friendship. Then we have the pleasure. I was interested in Rafael to explain all those different times, and so I didn't have to explain it myself. Many women married for 20 years who have never had an orgasm, and that's a problem. And then procreation as well. It's another essential aspect of sexuality. Women are conquered by tenderness. That's a message for the male. My husband always says, how come you love so much flowers, something so expensive and that lasts so little? That's tenderness. At the end, it's tenderness. The cognitive part is something that is complementary. Conversation. Our husband, our wife, is our best friend. It has to be our best friend. Marriage is a special way of friendship that is privileged, intimate, and powerful, and fantastic, marvelous. Is the friendship that generates most happiness in the life of a person. And that's why it is always also important to have admiration for each other. And it is true, those who are philologists have an easier thing to express. Feelings for the male is somewhat difficult sometimes. But those who have been studying languages, or it's easier for you. But when we have to talk and have a conversation, if you have entered in any modern home, you will see that each one of the members of the family is seeing a different screen, looking at a different screen. That's a problem. It's a problem for conversation. It's a problem for that communication that is necessary in that friendship. What is active listening? Well, before I said to close the journal and close your eyes, and now it's to close the screen and look at our eyes and pay attention to each other. This is the most important aspect of friendship in sexuality. The screens are bad, nasty. they don't allow us to communicate with others in a real manner. We look at Wojtyla says that love is to trust the walls of our own heart to another person that is going to be living in it. With a screen in between, it's very hard to give the walls of your own heart to another person. The pleasure that is the vital spring that is animating sexual relations is not obvious. Rafael has explained it very well. I was interested in him to explaining it. It's not obvious. And pleasure is important and is necessary. And a marriage whose sexual relation is that a woman doesn't reach a maximum pleasure is a marriage bound to failure. I've seen that several times, unfortunately. And procreation, as having a child, is the most palpable of illusions shared by two people, that because of that they love each other and a free act are able at the same time, in the same moment, to communicate love, give pleasure, and convey life at the same time. That's why it's such a powerful act. What happens when I skip one of them? What should I skip? The pleasure? No, I'm not going to skip pleasure. Tenderness. Lewis said that eros without tenderness and affection is not that nice. Conversation. Should I skip conversation? Friendship with my husband, my wife? What should I skip? If I skip, somehow the table is not going to be standing. One leg is missing. Sex is not that beautiful any longer. And that's why I have to reach the sexual relationship from the point of view of the body language. When a man and a woman desire each other, love each other, and love very much each other. When I have a sexual relation with you, when I give you my skin, I'm not giving you my skin. I'm giving you my life. And I hope receiving your life. And with my body, what I'm telling you in the sexual relation is my life is yours forever. And yours is mine forever. This is what a sexual relationship means with the body language. And this is very beautiful because human sexuality renders visible what is invisible. Human sexuality. What do we see in a sexual relation? What don't we see with our eyes? We see what the eyes of the heart. What we don't see with the eyes of the face, we see that those two lives are giving each other at that point in time. And this is done in three different ways. Because the person, Dr. Arroque certainly would correct me, but you are going to apologize for a while. I say one of the models of the person is in three layers: a physical part, an emotional part, and a spiritual part. So if I want to explain how do I surrender to my husband and how my husband is surrendering to me in a sexual relationship, I have to know what the person is, because the sexual relation is that what we can see, but the surrender of life is what we don't see. So physically, I'm telling you that I'm surrendering to you forever. This is something that has such a beauty that is overwhelming if we think about it properly. How have we reached those conclusions in our studies? We've gone to the modern anthropological personalism. We have reviewed interesting authors, Person and Action from Wojtyla, Max Scheler, Erich Stein, Manuel Burgos, and we have reached the conclusion that there is no model that explains comprehensively the person. After years and years of studying it, this is what the modern anthropological personalism says. But we have decided to follow it, especially person and action. When we follow it, person and action, persona and action, we see that the human being, the person, has a sort of three layers. the physical part, an affective part, and neurological, spiritual part, or of the knowledge. You can call it whatever you want. And those three parts, out of those three parts, it's very interesting that 1 and 2 inhabit the body. Both the physical part, this is understood by everyone. 1, it's the biology, and also feelings, emotions, and desires do also live in the body. And how come this is possible? A student was asking me, when you fall in love, what happens? Oh, what happens when you see that person that you are in love with? You blush, and the spiritual part is the part of the person that makes possible that we move towards the other. I skip this. I will leave the slide if you then want to go into depth in it. But one day, I was turning around about how to write this at the end. I was able to do that because it wasn't easy for me to explain this to my students in a simple manner, in a manner that they could really understand, that I could apply to that physical model, a psychoaffective and spiritual model, the human sexuality. How to explain sexual relations from this point of view of the person. I was having breakfast with one of my small children, the last one, but now he's 22 years, and he's at the university with one. I was having breakfast with my son, and he's very good visualizing the ideas. He immediately has a spatial vision, and he's drawing very well. Carlos, having my coffee, this is what is happening to me. I don't know how to explain the person in 3 layers applied to sexuality. Draw something. Shall I draw the person in 3 layers? Oh, it's a mess for me. What shall I do? Well, think for a couple of days and see what you can find out. And he says, good. This is what he thought about. Mom, I think I have your model already. It's going to be a planetary model. A planetary model? Yes. How come? Explain that. It was very important because it was the point of view of somebody who was 20 years old, of that generation, because I can already be old-fashioned. My son, who is 20 years old, belongs to the university world of this time. And he said, you say that the biological part is in the body. Perfect. Well, this is going to be the planetary model, the continents. There we have biology, physiology, the hormones, anatomy, all of that is there. Then we have the emotions, the feelings, and the desires. Well, in our planetary model, this is going to be water, but not only the sea water and the ocean water, but the water from the rivers, from the rain, the underground water, because the emotions and the feelings do impregnate the physical aspect. And the physicians, you know very well how this physical thing affects those emotions and desires, how this affects the physical health. And then, Mom, we have the atmosphere. And there we have the atmosphere, and in the atmosphere we have your super neurological layer, where you can put knowledge, intelligence, the freedom, and the heart. The philosophers discuss about what I said about heart. I know that, Maria Victoria, but as I am philosopher, according to, you know, that the personalism that does accept that. What is the idea? The idea is that when I have a sexual relation, I need to embark the whole person. The whole person is the whole person. I need to embark what is physical, and that's why the woman has to reach the orgasm, as Rafa explained. That's very important, because otherwise I'm not embarking the physical part of me. I need to embark my feelings, my emotions, my desires, because if I don't do that, wishes and desires and feelings, I'm not able to make you feel how much I love you in this sexual act. And this is absolutely fundamental. It's not valid just to reach the orgasm. I have to make you feel how much I love you. But apart from that, we have the spiritual part of the person. And the spiritual part of the person, she tells you is that my life is yours forever, 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 forever. And I say that physically as well, because that's the tool that I have as a woman to tell you that. It's the tool as a male I have to tell you that. Another day, a professor who was with me said we talked about marriage and the body and what the body theology meant. And he said, don't say so many things. Without body, there is no marriage. And sometimes we forget about it. Without body, there is no marriage. Well, so the biological layer means that both have pleasure. The psychoaffective layer, the water, means that I make you feel how much I love you. I make you feel. Love has to be felt. And the spiritual layer means that my life is yours forever. How can I make visible what is invisible? How? Rodin in The Kiss seems to have done it. How can I do it? With the natural methods. How can I do that? The natural awareness of fertility alternates between abstinence and non-abstinence. It has advantages in order to explain this that are tremendous, fantastic. It's able to make visible what is invisible only if a couple starts living seriously these natural methods. First, because it's an ongoing learning. I need to speak about my sexual relation frequently because I have to decide when I can have or I can't have. It's true, as Rafa said, the husband has to be informed because he have elastic mucus in the morning. Don't put these emojis. The response is, today I have the mucus, that's it. Message received. But the natural methods do face that coupled with its sexuality. It makes them make decision on the spot, and it makes us discover the other. Adapting to the rhythm of the other, as Rafa explained, the sexual response times, I don't have too much to add. But this is very important. The male is rapid, the woman is slow. If the male doesn't adapt to the sexual response times of the woman, she doesn't feel loved. That's as simple as that. So she has to feel taken care of physically and also from the point of view of the affections. And we do adapt. There is a fantastic school of knowledge of the other, both in the physical and emotional aspect and spiritual aspect. The male knows the fertile and infertile phases of the woman and adapts himself to respect them. And the woman understands that the male sexuality is more impulsive than hers and understand that there is a physical need that is different. And this is also important because the man loves you, but he also has a body and testosterone. And we women have to understand that. Generosity, making visible what is invisible, but why? Because when there is a sexual relation and I want to express to you that my life is yours forever and I want to express how much I love you, the most important thing in this relation is that you have to have a good time. So I'm thinking in you before I'm thinking of myself. Question for the women who are listening to us. How many of you want a husband or a fiancé without sexual self-mastering? How many want to be with a macho husband? How often have I asked this question to my students? They never never want that. The self-dominance of natural methods in the fertile phase help that when I then have a sexual relation, I'm giving myself completely to you because I know how to do it. I'm used to do that because I'm used to do that, both the man and the woman, because I'm trained to do that. Because if I'm not trained, I can't surrender to you because I don't know how to do it. What the macho predator is from John Paul II. I don't believe in rapid sexual relations. We have to have dedication and time because I think it's more hunger. They show more hunger or need of satisfying a desire, sometimes yes, but generally so, than a surrender. Sometimes the natural methods, people complain that the sex is not as spontaneous and it's prepared. But blessed, the prepared sex is fantastic, marvelous, because love is that. It's to take care, is to court the other, is prepare, is make his favorite meal. I brought you flowers. That's love. Dedication and time means that sex needs dedication and needs time. And that sometimes we have to follow that. We have to go there because, as we've seen in the video from Rafa, it's very difficult to have a sexual relationship with calm and tranquility in such an intense home environment. The American says 3W, 1 whiskey per week, 2 hours with you. Ask for favors, pay somebody to be with your children. This is very important. 1 whiskey a week. A weekend per every 3 months. Go away alone on your own. And the third one, very difficult, but that's the challenge. 1 week a year. 1 whiskey per week, every 3 months, 1 week, and 1 weekend, and 1 week a year. It's very difficult, but we can create it together. The marriage have very different phases, and in the bad phases, we need to use the fuel from the good memories we have created. Patience is a virtue, and the sexual patience is also a virtue. The natural methods are the school, perfect school, in order to learn that. Because as Rafa says, there are many moments in life where we want to have a sexual relation and we can't. And for that we have two ways of living it. Or dramatically, oh, I can't. Or we take it as part of life. Once I had a student, and I said that my husband was traveling. Now he doesn't, but at that time he traveled. And sometimes he traveled maybe 15 days. It was to another country, continent, or another country. And a student told me, oh, and when your husband is away, what do you do? Well, I wait him to come back. What do you want me to do, something with somebody else? No, this is surprising for people. No, it's... I have a habit that I have built, and nothing happens to me if I have to wait, because that's love. And that's why the natural methods do teach us, to those of us who practice it, that sexual patience is possible, is necessary, and is good. Conclusions. And I come to the end just in case there are questions as well. Everything I've said, and this, Luis, you are going to allow me to say it here, is at the heart of the teaching of the church about marriage and family. And it is there with one single goal: defend love, protect love. And what are we protected from? We are protected from the temptation of using the others instead of loving them. But it is there. We have to look for it. It is true. We have to bring it, take it out. It's true. We have to explain it. Yes, it's true. We have the challenge of explaining it, but it is there in the teaching of the church. From the Song of Songs to the body theology, it is there. That natural methods are a problem of attitude. That the first thing is that I love you. And as I love you, I want your good. everything good for you. What I'm concerned is you, about is you. I postpone my good for you because my individual interests are left behind, because the important thing is how much I love you. I talk about my sexuality. There is an increase of communication in my marriage. It strengthens the respect of the woman, of the husband towards the wife. No woman wants a husband that is a predator, macho, but no husband wants a woman who is not interested in sex and who lives it as something that is a Christian resignation. No, please, no, no, please. So I want my wife to love sexual relations. I want her to enjoy with me, because that's a fundamental part of my marriage. And I want her to be happy. That's why the contraceptives as a pill reduce the libido of the woman, and they are absolutely uninterested in sex. That's the opposite goal that we had when we started. In the natural methods, the sexual response times that Rafa has explained adapt to the person, because I know how to control that drive, and I know how to adapt my times to yours. I finish with a sentence of a book that I love. The author is not here, but he's in the Congress. It's Granados and Anderson. It's a book, a special book for me, in order to understand the body theology applied to natural methods with a simple language that is not difficult at all. In that book that is called Call to Love, from Granados and Anderson, they said that when two mountain climbers are scaling a mountain, they do it in a rope, tied one to the other. And this allows them, he's talking about the natural methods, this allows them to walk together, support each other, sustain each other if there is a danger for falling, and reach together the summit, or the goal in this case. Thank you very much. We have a little time for a few questions. I make a comment. I don't know if you had. Well, I think this workshop has been fantastic. And as I was listening to you, I was thinking that as we have organized this Congress, my dream was to have this workshop listened by many people. People in Latin America are sleeping, so they can't be now, but we have 1,000 people, around 1,000 people who have been connected to this workshop. But I will be everything in my hand so that the workshop reaches all the students in our university. I think this is something that is very important. I want to make it viral. And all the people who are listening to us now, they have to try to make it viral as well, because summarizing, it shows the beauty of the Christian perspective to sexuality that, of course, is also attractive for the non-Christians, but they want to steal it from us. The next generation wants to steal it from us. And how are we going to try to make this viral that is so attractive? Thank you. I think that this university that has the best school of medicine and school of communication in the world, how many people would be in this university with their fantastic schools of medicine and of communication was going to be able of understanding this and also explaining it? This is our challenge. As I said, that we have so many thousand years having the same product and the worst marketing. If you can answer this question that I'm going to ask now, how to make this reach as well all the feminist sectors, not only for the people of our university, but this message that is so beautiful, to make it reach those who in principle can have opposite positions. Well, it has happened to me that I gave a course on the different types of cervical mucus with a scanning microscope in a school or a nursing school to a group of midwives who were feminists. They were. And when I was explaining all that, I didn't start into the natural methods. I only explained the cervical mucus. That is that is quite important, as you know, and it takes time. And a girl told me, she belonged to a strong feminist movement. Oh, I love this. I don't have to take the pill in order to be available for a male that comes there during a party every time he wants. I'm going to subscribe to this. It's a message that also reaches other people. When we do explain it properly, it reaches. And with respect to how to make it viral, I think we can't lose any opportunity of speaking in any place. With a student, with a friend of my son, with, I don't know. And sometimes it's hard, and you know that. Luis, you know that as well. Sometimes you are invited to things where you say, oh my God, I can't put it, I can't anymore. But at the end, you are always happy because you say, really, you have opened the Mediterranean Sea and nobody knew that. What we do in the one-to-one is fantastic. But sometimes, in a corporate manner, we also have to do that. And we also have to do it means that not some subject matters can't be optional. There are people that it can't be so that many people end the School of Medicine without being experts in natural awareness of fertility. When I did the King Star, that has a program for monitors in an intensive weekend, you are converted sexually. It's a before and after in your life. After 4 days of training, I had two physicians who were in the MIR, in the School of Medicine in Spain, in 2011, I think it says it was. And they did quite well. One was the number 15 in Spain. Now he's cardiologist in Ciudad Real, and the other one number 1, and he's psychiatrist in Ciudad Real. And I told them things that they didn't know about. Many things, yes, many, about what I had learned in 4 days about the cycle of the woman that they didn't know anything about. Somebody is, this is free, the natural method is free, it doesn't cost anything. And my expense in pharmacy, I'm sorry for the pharmacist, but in 8 years of marriage have been 2 thermometers. The first one, Diana broke it herself, and the second one, well, but I think that in a corporate manner, we have to make an effort. So our midwife in Ciudad Real had nearly a stroke when we said we didn't use contraceptives. Who is training the midwives? And then there is another question around about, thank you for your answer about the feminists, that is true. I am being asked both in English and Spanish, what happens in the life of married people in abstinence periods using condoms or mutual masturbation? I think that the answer for the I've contraceptive before marriage and outside the marriage have a point of truth. I put myself in plastic so that to show that I'm not surrendering totally to you, but marriage is 100% surrender. So that wife and that husband have to join that fight. The husband, when he puts a condom, has to say, I love very much my woman, I want to go to bed to her, but I'm the only one who can wait for my woman, and waiting for her, I love her. But there are people who use the condom the one who goes with prostitutes and he's unfaithful. Is not yet married. He's not judging the others. I have to pull upwards. I have to pull upwards with this cart because without contraceptives, the infidelities will be much harder. And then we have the studies that do show that this symptothermal with condom in the fertile phase have much more pregnancies than the symptothermic directly. So that's a fact, a proven fact, and published fact as well. I think that we have to finish. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for those who say from Colombia he's awake seeing this workshop and listening to it. One question, but with the microphone. I can repeat it with a mic, says the doctor. Well, it's a question. I worked very many years in a school, and now I'm working at the Navarra University, also like you do. And that's why I did identify myself with everything that has been expressed here during this session. In this presentation, with the complementarity that has been achieved between both of you, philosophy and sciences, the discussion registry and the more formal registry between man and woman, because they are man and woman. Well, until we can prove the opposite. You haven't asked me if I feel like a man or not. We have seen that during your presentation, and you have really stated that quite clearly. Apart from this complementarity, I also like very much what you have in common, the depth of the message that has been conveyed. And I think that within inside the university, we have to make this message heard and reach not only the students of medicine, but all the other students. Some are more linked with this. You have mentioned the Faculty of Communication, the School of Medicine and Communication, but also pharmacy, biology, education, psychology. And if I kept on thinking, I think all the schools in the university. This is a personal issue that has to do with people, not with the school or the different disciplines in the university. With these words, what I want to say is just to thank you for everything you have said. Thank you very much. There is one question, the last one. Maybe in some schools, Catholic traditional schools, they are afraid to introduce clear training upon fertility, just in case we are giving them bad ideas. You know, this is an old argument that is absolutely meaningless. I think that when you know your word psychology, well, nothing better than knowledge in order to assume things freely. This is what is empowering us. Thank you very much.